We have arrived, and it's time to strike the earth. Now, the first thing you probably want to do, definitely want to do, is make sure you're paused, because we need to just have a look around and decide what we're going to do here. So I usually just have a little mosey around the landscape and get a feel for what we have here. Shift and arrow will make you move quite quickly. That looks like the river there. The less than and greater than keys will move you up and down the Z layers. So we're going up in the world, up in the world, up in the world, down in the world, down in the world, down in the world. Down one more and we can see the river. So this is one layer below where our dwarves are stood. You can see it's fairly flat. I was expecting it to be a little hillier. I have a poke around and see if there are any visible ores hanging around on the edge of any of these cliffs, but it looks like up here we have sandy clay loam walls. So just clicking on something will tell you what it is. Now let's head back down to the south. Escape helps you to move faster. Shift arrow helps you to move faster. That's as far west as I can go. Let's have a look down here. Haha. This looks like sand. Okay, so this hill goes quite a far way to the south. Let's get back up. Oh, there's a thing there. What's that? Hematite. Ah, so we found iron. That's really very nice. Okay, so we've got a clue that somewhere in this area here is iron. We'll remember that. Going up in the world. Up here we have loamy sand. Up in the world again. And we reach the top. Now to get back to the wagon, rather than searching all over the map for it, press F1 and that'll take you back to the wagon. Right, so this is all about digging. I've had a good look around the map now and got a feel for our location. I've done some marking, which I'll show you how to do. We've got probably 3 choices. 2 of them are sensible, 1 of them isn't, but is good fun. Our 2 sensible choices. One is to dig straight down, and the other one is to dig into the side of a hill. So we can go vertical or we can go horizontal. In this case, I'd like to do stairs in a separate episode. Mainly for that reason, I'm going to dig horizontal. The third option is to chop down some trees and build yourself an above ground fortress. That's extremely difficult to do. Surprisingly so, because an above ground fortress, you have to build floors and ceilings and not just walls. Whereas digging down and digging an underground fortress, the floors and ceilings are already there in the landscape for you. Dwarves dig faster than they build. So let's start looking at where to dig. It's a good idea to get your stuff into a safe location as fast as possible, because there's likely to be thieves on your map. And we can have a look at this if we looking at the main menu here. U takes us to the unit list. Click U. The first thing we have is our citizens. Use the arrow keys and we can switch to our pets and livestock. Now you can see we've got a yak and a horse that we didn't expect. You always arrive with 2 additional animals that have pulled your cart. There are 2 others on the map and they are Coati. And the Coati is prone to steal things. Now there's only 2 on the map at the moment. We don't know how many other creatures might wander on any moment, and these 2 might be prone to stealing our things. Let's get our stuff underground. The next bit of the menu. Dead and missing. Nothing. No one has gone missing or died. The year is still young. Indeed. Right, escape to come out of that menu. So to get the dwarves to haul all of the stuff that we've brought with us, and we've brought a deceptive amount. There's a lot of stuff on that cart. Our cart is this brown square here, and it's going to take them quite a while to move the stuff. So if possible, it's worth trying to build somewhere that is close to your cart. Now that very much depends on the circumstances. We're going to dig into the side of the hill relatively close to where our cart is. So to dig, I think what we'll do is we will dig down here and we'll just make one big room so that we can just bring all of the stuff inside and have somewhere for our dwarves to sleep that's not out in the open. They really don't like sleeping under the stars. So I have 3 goals for myself when I'm playing a relatively quiet map like this. There's 3 things that I like to achieve within the first season. That gives us 2.5 months because we're already halfway through the first month. And that is to get my dwarfs sleeping underground. So we want some beds for the dwarfs. To get all of my stuff underground and safe from thieves. And to put a front door between us and the outside world. Often what I'll do before I start digging anywhere is to start marking out a fortress. Now, for this tutorial series, I've been a little more prolific than I normally would, and I've marked out quite a lot of the fortress. So let me show you what exactly I've got planned so far. And you can do this by digging in marker mode. I'll show you how to do that. So it's D for designations, D for mine, and then down the bottom here you can see the little m is standard or marker only. So I'm going to switch that to little m, marker only, and that allows us to plan things that the dwarves will ignore. So we can set them massive digging tasks and they will ignore them until we turn it back to standard. So let's just mine a little bit with box select on so that it will mine me a rectangle. I'm going to presume that here is where we're going to want an entrance into our starter fortress. So this will be a temporary hole in the ground, and we'll make this a storage area in the long run probably. Escape to come out of that menu, and let me show you what I've marked out, because you're going to get glimpses of this as we go through the tutorials, so it's probably wise. So yes, this top area is going to be storage. The X's, the blue X's, are staircases. We'll go through those separately. Heading downwards, I'll have food underground, a bit more storage. This is where I'm going to put my workshops. Here is where I'm going to have an underground trade depot. All of the lines are guidelines to where the corners of the maps are. This is where my bedroom floor is. This is where my nobles and dining rooms and common rooms are. Alright, so we want to dig in here. If you plan on building trenches or moats, it's important to avoid digging rooms underneath where you're going to dig your trenches. Digging through the ceiling of a mined area it can be quite tricky to avoid roof collapses. You have to kind of micromanage how you channel that out. We'll do channeling in just a moment. But first of all, let's just dig ourselves some space here. So maybe I don't want to go all the way up to the staircase, because this is a temporary room and it's a lot easier to expand things than it is to shrink them. That will probably do for our starter hole. I'm making it too wide because that makes it easy for the dwarves to pass by each other, and we can put doors next to each other as long as every door is touching a solid wall. So you can put 2 doors next to each other, but you can't put 3. Probably about say slightly less than 2/3 of this room is going to be for storage. So maybe I want to get them to dig the storage bit first. So let's shrink this again. Well, by using X to remove designation, we can shrink it there. So we'll prioritize digging out the area for storage. Now, to tell the dwarves that they can actually dig this bit, I'm happy with that. I'm happy for them to dig this area. We want to use capital M, which is on the menu here, to toggle standard to marking. And what this allows us to do is to mark a large area and say, yes, you're allowed to dig that. So if it's this light brown colour, it's active. If it's a light blue colour, then it's just planning and the dwarves will ignore it. So to get them digging, we need to allocate some people to miners. And for that, we're going to need Dwarf Therapist. We bring up the lazy new pack, double click Dwarf Therapist, and it loads us in. So who do we want doing our mining? We'll go through Dwarf Therapist in more detail in another episode, I think. I had intended to give somebody some mining skills, and then as I was recording, I completely forgot. So I told you how to do it and then didn't do it myself. So we have no experienced miners. But we do have 4 picks. So let's say Adam and Alfie will get you doing some digging. Tammy, Spotted Cow's somebody who likes being outdoors, so we'll keep Spotted Cow outdoors. Jim, we'll make you 4 into miners. And then it is commit changes to make that stick. F1 to come back to the caravan. And it's time to unpause. Spacebar to unpause. Okay, we see some of the dwarves grabbing picks, and the flashing indicates that there are 2 people going to work on that. As they open this up a little bit wider, we'll get more of the dwarves digging. At the moment, there are only 2 areas that are accessible to dwarves, so only 2 dwarves can dig. So we can see the number of idlers has changed to 5 from 7. Now, while they're digging that out, I'm going to want some people to chop trees. And I'm going to want people to chop trees that are in an area where I'm going to want to channel. So I need to work out where those channeled areas are going to be, because I want to dig a trench. And it's important to chop down the trees before you dig a trench. Where do I want my trench to be? So I did a little bit of planning. So I want an 8 wide trench. This is the cross there is the middle of the map, just for guidance for me. D for designations. Now immediately you can see that there is flashing blue here. That means that this particular block of stone or soil or tree roots is in contact with a damp stone. That means there is a risk of flooding, but not always. If there is water beneath you or water above you, then it will flash blue. Now if you dig underneath water, as long as it's not an aquifer, it won't leak. And if you dig above water, the floor won't collapse into it. But it will still give you a warning that it's damp stone. Sometimes you get flashing, they look like little red suns, and that tells you that it's hot stone that must be in contact with magma. That's always worth being cautious about. So we want to channel. Let's go H for channel. I only want to mark these channels out. I don't want to get them digging. We want to get them marked. So just make sure that the little m is on marker only, and it is. But it's not this layer that we want to channel on. So the easiest way to move between the marks on the Z levels and the actual layer is to use the cursor. Now we'll just use the cursor to get over there. That's the point where we want to start. And we'll head down to the bottom of the channel that's closest to the fortress. Doing that because that'll be the higher point. So let's go up until we reach the surface. Okay, so we want the channel to start there. So it's enter to start. And it wants to go to the north. So the channel in it's marked by these little symbols, and they flash annoyingly. So I don't want to mark too much of this out, just enough for me to be able to see which trees are in the channeling area. We can only channel up to there. Let's head down to the marker again. So we want to go from where we are, and we want to have a further 3 tiles to the north. Okay, so it is hit enter, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, we can only do 2, so let's go down again, hit enter, and it's those 2. So I'm going to mark out the rest of the surface channeling to do so I can see which trees are in the way of the channels that I want to dig. Well, now I've marked out where my trench is going to be, which is where all the annoying blue flashing is. We'll actually remove those markings before too long, because it'll be a while before we start digging those out. But I can see that my trench, if I was to mark that, is going to come very close to the entrance here. I probably don't want that. So instead, what I'm going to get them to do is to channel this area so that this isn't solid rock, it's an open space. So I'm going to remove the designation here. Now they can no longer path to this, so they can't dig it. So idlers has now turned back to 7. If we go up a level, and it's D, H to channel, and it's those 2 there. And I want to not have my marker on for that, so we can just channel over it again with standard switched on. So the dwarves will channel down those 2 spaces there. That will leave them an open space, and then they'll be able to access these 2 areas, the rest of the area to dig. And there is one of the coaties. Looks like he might be making a beeline for our stuff, but we've got a lot of dwarves in the area, so they should help to protect it. We might see our dogs starting to fight it if it gets too close. Now, while our dwarves are mining, I'm going to get somebody else chopping down trees. I shall cover that in the next episode. So I'll cut that bit out and then we'll carry on with digging. So we've dug out this whole area, even extended it from where it was. We've chopped down some trees, we've moved all the stuff in. I'll go through all of this in the next episode. Let's do some of the more interesting details about digging. So first of all, a warning about digging close to the surface. There is a bug at the moment. It's recognised as a bug. It's not intended behaviour. But if you dig out an area like this and it is only 1 level below the surface, if we chop down any trees immediately above an empty space, it's going to leave a hole in the floor and things can just fly through or even jump through those holes. So it becomes a bit of a risk to have rooms that are dug in immediately below a surface. We have 2 choices. We can either make sure that we never chop down any trees above this area, or we can make sure that we don't ever store anything of any importance in this room. Or a third option, in fact, is to chop down the trees, but to make sure that we build a floor over the hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wood stockpile over this area because I'm going to need more wood stockpiles. So that's P for stockpile and W for wood. Something I might decide to do in the future is I might decide that I want to flatten some of this area, make it a little bit smoother so that it's easier to place stockpiles and animal zones so they're not going up and down the Z levels. However, if I wanted to channel above here, I would have to micromanage it, and the way to do that is to mark it for channeling, DH. I'll put it on marker only because I don't actually want them to do this. Let's take box select off, so Alt M, and you go for every second 1. Let them channel out those, and then do the ones in between. That way nobody's going to channel under somebody else's feet, because they will. And you have to do it row by row by row. Now let's talk about some of the more complicated aspects of digging. Let's go down underground. So sometimes you want to dig out some fancy patterns like I have here. And yes, we could dig. Let's see, do I have box selects on? I do. We can do it manually like so. Or we can do it by recording an action and then playing that action back. And this is a perfect example of where this is a useful thing to do. Don't use the mouse controls for this. Let's take the mouse out the way. Just use the cursor controls. So let's move the cursor over to where we want it. And then it is Control R to begin recording. You'll see the flashing recording up in the top left. Now we then want to go enter to say start there, and then move the cursor down to where you want it to stop. We'll go across 1, enter to start there, enter to stop, and then as a little extra I'm going to move it to where I would want it to start again. And now press Control R, that stops the recording. Control S to save it. Now I don't have text, will be text at the moment, so we just get a big bar across the screen. That's fine. Press escape. So now if we press Control P, it does it for us. And we can put all of those, these are bedrooms, put all of those additional bedrooms in. I like to draw a lot of diagonal lines, and diagonal lines are so much easier using the macros. So let's have a look at where I've been drawing diagonals. These diagonal lines are marking out where the corners of the maps are. Because I don't have a square map, if I just scoot up to the corner This line here is leading from this corner of the map, from the northeast corner. However, this line is leading from the southwest. And drawing these lines, you can do it by just marking each square individually. However, it's an awful lot easier if you're going to draw diagonal lines to use a recorded macro for it. So let's just give you a little example of that. So it would be D for mine. I'm going to put this on, yes, it is on marker only because I don't want to actually get them digging. Let's move the cursor to a useful space. We'll go up here, say. Okay, and then I don't want box select on for this. So it's Control R to record, enter, move sideways, upwards. Now I didn't want to do a 4x4 box, so I press Control R to stop it. And now let's say X to remove. And we'll just go across. Right, let's try that again. Now, I could have cut that out of the video, but I thought it was useful to show you when you've made a mistake when recording, just how easy it is to undo. So let's do it again. Right, D for mine and Control R. And when you're in the cursor mode, it's double click to make a single square. It's single click if you are using the mouse. So I'm gonna make a diagonal that's a few squares long, and then Control R to stop the recording, Control S to save, escape, and now we'll do Control P, Control P, Control P, and that diagonal just whizzes itself up there. Really quick and easy way to do diagonals. And if you're digging diagonal tunnels, of course, you can make it much wider. Very easy way. Right, now I need to remove all of that. We'll put box select on to remove, and I'll just be careful I don't cut out any of the lines that I actually want to keep in there. Another time that using the cursor rather than the mouse is handy is if you're doing really long lines, like I did for these verticals and horizontals. So if I wanted to draw a line all the way out to the center of the map, or if I wanted to remove a designation, the easiest way to do it, let's move down here a little bit. So dig, we'll just mark where we want the line to start. Doesn't matter whether box select is on or off for this. And then we'll just arrow shift it all the way over, press enter, and it puts it in. It's quicker than using the mouse if you're wanting to scroll off the edge of the map. So we want to remove that. X to remove, from enter to start it, all the way over. Yeah, faster than the mouse. Two more tricks I want to show you. This first one is a little bit cheaty, but only a little bit. I don't always use it. I've used it this time, and that is finding out when you're digging where exactly the cave systems are. So I was marking out all of this fancy stuff, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not marking out an area where the dwarves are going to dig into the caves, because that's an awful lot of time spent marking stuff out where in an area where they can't dig because it's open space. And the way to find out if this is solid ground or not is to try and build a farm plot. So it is B for build, P for plot, and then U several times to expand it vertically, and K to expand it horizontally. And what we're looking at here is what it says. If it says blocked, no mud or soil, then we know we're on solid ground. And so I shall whiz it around, and you can see that the menu doesn't change at all. So this must all be solid. There's nothing here but solid rock. There could be gems, there could be any kind of material here, but it is all solid material. Now that won't always be the case, so we can use this to find out where the caves actually are. Let's go to the middle of the map marker, so it's less distracting. Place it over there, and we'll just go down until we see a change. Now these caves are very deep. Usually you find caves in the first 10 to 20 layers. Aha, okay. There we found a cave. I can tell because the farm plot can be placed. So there's a cave floor there. And if we try and move the farm plot around, you'll see it highlights. So it's solid there, but move it up a little bit and we hit cave floor. So you can actually see what the shape of the cave looks like. And it must be the very top layer of the cave, because if we move around, there's... Oh, hang on. There. See how it changes? We now need soil or mud. So we're probably on the top of a tree. There'll be something, there's an airspace, but there's something in the airspace which is not solid rock. So it's probably a tree, because you get trees in the caves. So we can't tell where the airspaces are, but we can tell where the trees are, and we can tell where the ground level is of the caves. But we know that we're a good ways away. Now another trick I'm going to show you, and this, again, is it cheaty or isn't it cheaty? It's not in the vanilla game. Let's go up to the surface, F1. And we found, when we were scoping around the place before, we found some hematite. There it is. Now if I click on that hematite and then press Ctrl V, it'll mark the entire vein. How big is that vein? It'll mark that entire vein for digging. Now let's undo that. So D for designate, X for remove designation, box select is on, good, because I want to remove that whole area. The other thing we can do is click on it, and it is Ctrl Shift V, and instead of just the level that it's on, it will also mine anything that's a connected layer above or below. But this is a bit annoying because it leaves all kinds of stairs around the place, and quite frankly I prefer not to. I might do it sometimes to tell me if there's ores below the level that I'm on. But yes, let's now take that off. But quite nice to know that we've actually got quite a large vein of iron there. But yes, this is going to take a little bit of cleaning up. A quick mention about channeling near water. There we go. So you can see that when I was measuring my trench, I left it 1 block away from water. There is a murky pool slope there, so that will fill with water at times. If you channel diagonally next to water, the water will flow through and flood your trench or your moat. You might want that. We'll use that to dig out underground water systems. So say for example I wanted to build myself an underground water system that connected to the river. What I would do is we'll say dig. I'm going to put this marker only, yeah. So that's going to be our water system. And I would take the channel up to the edge there. But I'd let them then dig all of that out. Then go up to the top and channel that one there. And what that channel would do is to allow the water to flow out and into this area, and the dwarf doesn't stand on top of the tile that is channeling. He'll stand next to it, so he won't get swept away by the water. Right, let me get rid of those markings. Now let's talk about why dwarves won't mine, because on occasions it happens you've set an area to be dug out and for some reason the dwarves just won't do it, either channeling or digging. And there's a few reasons. There's some obvious ones, that you don't have a spare pick. You don't have any dwarves designated to digging. So check dwarf therapist. Do you have dwarves that are designated to mining? Are those dwarves currently too busy, or are they idle? So if we had something that we're trying to dig, and at the moment we've got an idle dwarf who's allowed to mine, so we would expect them to go and mine. So other things that can prevent your dwarves from mining, you may have a burrow designated. We'll talk about burrows in another episode. If your dwarf is allocated to a burrow and the area that you're asking them to dig is outside the burrow, they won't dig it. Even if they're stood right next to it, if the burrow goes right up to the edge of the designated digging or channeling area, they won't do it. And they're a bit funny about channeling and whether or not they're allowed to channel when you designate a burrow. Make sure that the burrow covers both the level that they're going to stand on and the level that they're going to cut down to. The burrow will need to cover both said levels. And the last reason I can think of as to why dwarves don't mine is because they can't find a path to the area. Same with more likely with channeling really. If you channel down more than one Z layer, or you remove the ramps around and you leave yourself a little tabletop mountain, the dwarves need to be on the top surface that they're trying to channel. They can't channel upwards, they can only channel downwards. So they won't be able to find a path to an area that you have channeled all around. So when channeling, it's always useful to get them channeling from the top surface. So for me, I am going to be channeling a large area here, and I will start them by channeling the highest surface. I've left these fully marked, and I'll get them to channel out this top layer first, and then we'll work our way down through the soil. And I think that's all I can think about to talk about digging and channeling. If you've got anything to add, please add it to the comments.